Wolfsbane, or Rain Sinclair, was an orphan raised by an abusive pastor. When her mutant powers revealed themselves, a mob tried to burn her at the stake. She was rescued by Moira MacTaggart and is one of the New Mutants. She has the ability to transform into a wolf or a transitional form partway in between a wolf and a human at will. In her transitional form, she has enhanced size, strength, speed, reflexes, agility, stamina, durability, night vision, and hyperkeen senses, as well as a healing factor. In her wolf form, she is basically like a wolf, but with some stronger senses. She has normal strength in her human form and increased strength in her other forms, although it's not wildly different. How do all these powers work, and could they work in the real world?
First of all, let's get something out of the way. Is it possible to turn into a wolf the way Rain does in the Marvel Comics? No, obviously not. However, let's say you were a really big Wolfsbane fan and wanted to turn into a wolf. Well, there are several options for you to do that. First, let's look at the differences between humans and wolves. For one thing, humans have vertebrae that stack and have wide cushiony discs in between them, as well as muscles on both sides that keep their spine upright. Wolves do not have this, and instead their spines are shaped in a very rigid manner to support the ribcage and organs that hang below them. Second, humans have limbs that lock when straight, which reduces strain on the leg muscles when standing upright. Wolves lack this locking mechanic and therefore have to exert energy to stay upright, forcing them to walk on all fours. Another difference lies in the jaws of humans and wolves. A wolf's bite strength can range from 400 to 1200 pounds per square inch depending on how much danger it's in, while a human's bite strength is a mere 160 psi. This is due to the fact that their jaws have evolved over time differently than ours due to a difference in hunting methods. So then how do we eliminate these differences to turn our Wolfsbane superfan into an actual wolf? Well, jaw transplants are quite common today. However, the problem is that humans and wolves have very differently shaped heads, which makes it impossible to slap a wolf jaw on a human skull or vice versa. Luckily, we have prosthetic jaws to make up for it. In 2015, doctors in Australia replaced a man's damaged jaw with a titanium one using advanced 3D imaging and 3D printing. In addition, scientists at the University Medical Center Göttingen in Germany have created a surgically implanted sensor that can pick up nerve signals from motor neurons in order to move prosthetic body parts. Human jaw muscles are incapable of producing the same bite strength as a wolf, but an electrical jaw that's programmed to move when it detects the motor neurons that control the jaw could be engineered to be the same or even stronger than that of a wolf. In order to turn a human into a quadruped creature, it would be a simple matter as well. Developments in robotic limb prosthetics have been on the rise recently, with a modular prosthetic limb developed by scientists at Johns Hopkins at the forefront of this field. This revolutionary device has over 100 sensors that pick up signals from the brain in order to move the limb. Combining this prosthetic technology with the design of the limbs on something like the Boston Dynamics robotic dog Spot Mini will allow us to create our cyborg dog human.
Wolfsbane is said to have superhuman strength, agility, and stamina, as she uses these powers to defend herself and others from attacks from her enemies. Her bones are extremely strong and likely come from training and exercises such as yoga and Tai Chi, as these exercises build up agility due to the fact that bones are living tissues and they adapt to the forces being placed on them, hence build more cells and become more dense when exercised. The human equivalent to this is where, in 2012, a war veteran named Arthur, who was unable to walk, was able to run after just 7 months of intense yoga. Her strength likely comes from the way in which her muscles move. Muscle fatigue, which is typically defined as a decline in the maximal force or power capability of muscle, limits strength in humans, but for Wolfsbane, the lack of this fatigue contributes to her strength, greatly differing from humans. But how close can a human get to superhuman strength? While there have been multiple accounts of normal people lifting an absurd amount of weight, such as cars or fighting bears, this is only confined to extreme examples. This is defined as hysterical strength, which is a display of extreme strength. And even then, in most reported hysterical strength examples, people were described to have lifted only a portion of a vehicle several inches off the ground, and not the entire car. Compared to Wolfsbane, who has demonstrated to use her powers of strength in an effective and positive way. In our everyday lives, our body limits ourselves from using 100% of our theoretical strength. It is more efficient and conserves energy, also protecting our body from injuring itself. Wolfsbane uses hysterical strength, 100% of her theoretical strength, and the lack of muscle fatigue, resulting in her perceived superhuman strength. And although human research on hysterical strength is developing and more research is being conducted, humans still do not have the capacity to reach superhuman levels of strength.
Despite the connection of regeneration between Wolfsbane and the average human, a major aspect of Wolfsbane's superhuman abilities is her eyesight, which cannot be attained by humans. In the comics, she is capable of seeing both infrared and ultraviolet sections of the electromagnetic spectrum. Is this possible for humans such as ourselves? Not by a long shot. The visible spectrum, as it's called, is the portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that the human eye can see. This includes wavelengths varying from 380 nanometers to 700 nanometers. Beyond either of those bookends, the wavelengths are either too large, in the case of infrared, or too small, in the case of ultraviolet, for humans' perception of them as light. Therefore, the visible light spectrum refers to the rigid limitation of the human eye's capability to perceive these rays. We experience infrared not through sight like Wolfsbane does, but as a feeling of heat. As for ultraviolet, we can connect the rays to the common human experience of getting a sunburn. Of course, we are unable to physically see the rays that lead to the burn. However, with Wolfsbane's scientifically impossible powers, it is proposed that she would be capable of this.
Rain Sinclair's mass varies between her forms. She is around 50 kilograms in her human form, up to about 186 kilograms while in her transitional form, up to about 476 kilograms while a wolf. The law of conservation of matter holds that mass cannot be created or destroyed, yet her different forms have different masses. That means the extra mass has to come from somewhere when she turns into a wolf, and has to go somewhere else when she transforms back into a human. Different possible sources exist, yet none work. Due to her normal strength in her human form, it is not plausible that she's using the mass of her clothes, as she would be unable to lift the several hundred kilograms that they would necessarily be. Another possible source is the surrounding air. The density of air varies, meaning approximation dense air would require Rain Sinclair to absorb/release a smaller volume than less dense air, so for approximation will give her the benefit of the doubt and calculate air with a higher density. Since the colder air is the more dense, it is reasonable to use air degrees Celsius for an estimation. If she does transform as not below freezing, I also use atmospheric pressure at sea level or 1 km, since air density is lower at higher altitudes. With the online calculator provided by engineeringtoolbox.com, I found that the air density is 0 degrees Celsius and 1 atm is equal to 1.292 kilograms per meter cubed, with an air between plus or minus 0.2%. Using that equation, the difference in mass between Rain's human and wolf forms are up to 426.37684 kilograms would equal 330 cubic meters of air. That would equal 360.9 cubic yards, or a vacuum about 3 football fields long in each dimension. With those numbers, regardless of which way she's transforming, it would be incredibly dangerous and extremely destructive. Quite clearly, she does not use the surrounding air to transform. However, she's shown to transform in midair. Her clothes and the surrounding air are the only other source of mass she could use. This means we have to start looking at Einstein. Special relativity holds that mass and energy can be changed into each other. How much energy would it take for Rain to transform into her wolf form? Well, the equation is equals mc squared, with c being equal to the speed of light. Using this equation, 1 kilogram of mass is equal to 90 quadrillion joules of energy. The 426.37684 kilograms of mass Rain can gain by transforming would take 3.8 times 10 to the 19 joules of energy. As Rain uses no outside energy source to transform, how much food would she be eating prior to this transformation? Well, in 2011, the world ate 1,047,550 calories in the entire year, or about 4,382,950 joules. Rain would eat 8,669,960,000,000 times as much as the entire world did in 2011 just to transform once. That's not possible. In conclusion, it is physically impossible for Rain Sinclair to transform into a wolf.
Evidently, Rain's powers are not all possible by human standards, and thus portraying her in a movie would necessitate the use of computers. While her movie The New Mutants has been delayed for several years, we can speculate how Rain's powers could be portrayed. The way she would be incorporated into a movie is via a method called computer-generated imagery, or CGI for short. CGI is how movies make unrealistic animals, humans, and powers like her look real. But how does it work, and how can it portray Rain? It all starts off as storyboards. Animators use vague outlines that show what the final product should look like. It then goes on to skeletal models, which would show how the character will move, and then most importantly, a way to make the animation look real. This is done through lighting, texture, and color. In Wolfsbane's case, there are 2 forms that would have to be CGI animated: her transitional form and her wolf form. The transformation between her forms would also require CGI. Wolves have been portrayed in CGI many different times, so doing a wolf for Wolfsbane in CGI would be nothing new. Her transitional form would probably not be too different from other motion captured humanoids. As for her transformation, a wolf's body parts are in different locations than a human's. For example, a human's ears are on the side of their head, while a wolf has ears on the top of its head. This means each time Wolfsbane transforms, her ears would have to change shape and texture while shifting to a different position on her head. These sudden changes are completely unrealistic, meaning that it would take a lot of work in order to make the transformation look smooth. It also applies to other aspects of Wolfsbane's transformation, such as her legs changing shape and size. This incredibly complicated movement is why skeletal models are very important when training Wolfsbane. With a simple skeletal model, the animators will be able to test ways for Wolfsbane's body parts to successfully change shape without it looking unrealistic by seeing how moving some parts of Wolfsbane's skin would realistically affect the shape of Wolfsbane's body, and determine from there how the transformation can go smoothly. They can also use this stage in the models to figure out how the transformation would work when Wolfsbane is jumping, sitting, or doing any other action that would make the transformation more complicated. After all these animations of skeletal models are finished, proper skin must be added to the models, and revisions must be added to the smallest of details in the animation. Even the most minuscule of details counts in CGI films, and a film with Wolfsbane in it would be no exception.
Ultimately, it is evident that despite the intricacies and work involved to make Wolfsbane look realistic on screens, holistically her abilities are unattainable by the human body, with explanations hailing from multiple scientific disciplines. While the vast majority of her abilities are impossible to replicate, similarities and connections can still be drawn between the experience of a human and that of Rain Sinclair. In full, our analysis of Wolfsbane's abilities served to demonstrate the potential to draw connections and find commonalities in even the most outlandish or seemingly unrelated topics, and thus supporting the overall mentality that there is merit in all exploration and inquiry, particularly that of a scientific nature.